Hey everyone, it's me Tim from FTA Adventures, and today I'm going to talk about budgeting for a motorcycle trip. This applies to both short trips as well as longer ones. This video will help you figure out how much your trip will cost you so you can set off on your journey with confidence that you have the money you will need to do all the things you want to do. So let's jump in. It's super important to have a budget for a motorcycle trip, especially on longer ones. This will allow you to plan your trip knowing you won't run out of money before your final destination, which could be a major bummer to get all the way to a faraway place only to have to turn around and head home because you ran out of money. First, let's discuss factors that influence the cost of a motorcycle trip. First, we have fixed costs, which could be one-time expenses like buying your motorcycle, registering, insuring your bike, and riding in safety gear, as well as your camping gear. Depending on whether you're traveling domestically or abroad, you may need to factor in visa expenses as well. Safety gear should cost anywhere from $500 to $1,000 or more for everything you need, but you can also spend a ton more than that. I think it's best to buy the most expensive helmet you can afford and cheap out on the rest of your gear if you have to. A helmet should not only be safe for you, but it should also be comfortable, aerodynamic, and quiet. You're likely going to spend a lot of time in your helmet, so make sure it's a good one. Jacket, pants, boots, and gloves should also be comfortable, but these are less critical, so you can save some money here if you want. There are tons of safe and comfortable options that are also affordable. You definitely don't want to break the bank before you ever even leave on a trip. Camping gear is another fixed cost. With some items, you either buy nice or you buy twice, meaning cheaping out could end up costing you more in the long run. You want to make sure that your shelter and sleep system are the best they can be, meaning spend the most on these items: your tent, sleeping bag, and sleeping pad. The rest of the stuff you can skimp a little on, like a chair, pillow, cooking setup, etc. Next, we can discuss variable costs, meaning ongoing expenses. This would be things like fuel, accommodations, food and drinks, maintenance costs, and insurance fees. Most likely the biggest expense once you are out on the road is going to be fuel, followed by accommodation. Fuel is what it is. If you have a certain destination in mind, it's going to cost what it will cost, and there isn't much you can do about that. There is a lot more flexibility in accommodations and food. Staying in hotels will of course cost a lot more than camping for cheap or even free. Also, when camping, you are much more likely to cook your own food, meaning a drop in dining out expenses. Depending on the length of your trip, you may need to do maintenance while you're on your journey. This is another good reason for planning ahead, knowing your route and how many miles you will be doing, so you can budget for oil changes and other maintenance costs. Now let's talk about how to estimate the cost of your next moto adventure. First, you need to figure out where you're going and how many miles you expect to do. This is only an estimation, and you want to make sure to round up to save room for unexpected reroutes and destinations you found out about while you were on your trip. It's always better to have more in your budget than what you actually need. First, let's talk about fuel. Once you know the mileage of your trip, you can estimate your fuel. You also need to know about your motorcycle's fuel economy, meaning how many miles, roughly, you get per gallon. Let's say you want to travel 3,000 miles and your bike gets about 50 miles per gallon. Let's first round up your expected mileage by about 1/3. So instead of 3,000, we have 4,000. You would simply need to divide 4,000 by 50 to see how many gallons you will need. This works with kilometers and liters as well. So 4,000 divided by 50 gives us approximately 80 gallons of fuel. Given the average cost of fuel at the time of this video, we will say gas costs about $5 US, which let's round that up to 6. So now we know how many gallons we need, and we know the cost of fuel, which we can find with a quick Google search for average fuel cost in the country we're traveling in. So we just need to multiply 80 gallons times $6 a gallon to get a total of $480. So let's say 500 to keep it in round numbers and to give us a little more of a cushion. Next, let's talk about accommodations. Again, there is a lot of flexibility here, but even if you plan to camp, depending on the length of your trip, you may want to account for at least a few hotel stays. It's important to note that you should probably avoid booking hotels too far in advance if you are on a longer trip. Things can be unpredictable, and the last thing you want is pressure to ride on past your limits to get to a predetermined destination. So anyways, let's say that our 4,000-mile trip is going to last 2 weeks. Let's say you plan to camp 5 nights a week at an average price of $20 a night, and 2 hotels a week. Some campgrounds are more, some are less, and some are free, like in National Forest and BLM land. Somewhere between $15 to $30 a night are about what you can expect in the US. So let's also say that hotels will cost about $100. They could be more depending on your tastes, so if you like staying in more expensive hotels, then budget for what you think your average hotel will be. I've seen decent hotels anywhere from $60 to $120 a night. So we have 5 nights of camping at $20 a night, so $100. and we have 2 nights at $100, so that's $300 a week in accommodations. So $600 total for your trip. Food and spending money is a very personal category. You will know best how often you expect to eat, where you will be dining, and what other personal daily expenses might be incurred. I plan for about $20 to $30 a day, and I cook for myself when I camp, which saves me some money. But I do like to go out and enjoy the local cuisine, so let's say $25 times 14 days, that's another $350. I'm gonna round that up to $400. So far, we have $500 in fuel, $600 in accommodations, and $400 in food and personal. That brings our total cost to $1,500. And as far as maintenance, it depends if you plan to do the work yourself or bring it to a shop. You should expect to go through a rear tire every 10,000 miles or so and a front every 20,000 or so. You should expect at least one flat. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but this is one of the most common unexpected expenses. Oil changes are about every 5,000 miles and anything else you can expect to need for your trip. For our 2-week trip, we should probably leave with fresh oil and fluids and a new set of tires. So there really wouldn't be any major expenses here. One side note, make sure to keep your tires properly inflated. They will last much longer for you, saving you money in the long run. You do want contingency money though, or at least a credit card in case something unexpected happens, like a mechanical malfunction or if you need more hotels than you thought you were going to need. Let's say $500 for the 2-week trip. This is also a personal factor because people have different comfort levels when it comes to risk. Some people might be happy to wing it and not worry too much about it, while others may expect the worst case scenario. It's up to you, but I think $500 for 2 weeks is a good cushion. So our 2-week trip will cost about $2,000. This is an estimate, but this formula has worked for me in the past when budgeting for trips. Anywhere from a long weekend jaunt all the way up to a 10-month excursion to all the national parks in the United States. As you go on more trips and you practice these formulas, you will get better at budgeting for the way you like to travel. I personally like to camp for free as much as possible and spend the money elsewhere, like more fuel in the tank or a few extra meals out. Some other tips for accommodations and how to save money. I have found Priceline to be a great asset for finding rooms on the cheap. Google Maps is another good way, and it's easier to do this on a map while looking at where everything is in relation to you. They also compare prices from all different websites. But like I said, I have had the best luck with Priceline, and they seem to favor you if you book through them in the past. On a shorter trip, it can be easier to plan ahead on lodging, so that is one advantage to a shorter trip. Another way to save money is to plan ahead when packing. Avoid having to buy things like a toothbrush, deodorant, or any gear that you may have forgotten at home. This all gets much easier with experience and time. I used to start packing a week or so before I left, partly because I was excited, but also because I was less likely to forget anything if I went over it a few times, packed and unpacked my bags before putting them on the bike. There's also things like Bunkabiker, which I personally haven't used yet, but that could be a way to cut some costs. If you aren't familiar with it, it's basically a couch surfing type website where you can find places to crash for free with fellow riders. There's also other sites like this too, and just plain networking on social media can also help. I have had the opportunity to stay with a lot of you guys while out and about traveling in the United States, and it's been a real highlight of my trips, getting to meet new like-minded people. So there's lots of options to save some money and even spice up your trip a bit. Plus the locals know the best places to ride. So now you should have a pretty good idea of how much your next trip will cost. This simple formula should get you pretty close to your budget. Always expect to spend more than you think though, especially in the beginning when trip planning is still new to you. It's easy to under budget and overestimate how far we can get for a certain amount of money. Always err on the side of caution and plan for the unexpected. You also want to enjoy your trip, so planning on camping for 2 months straight with no hotels is a pretty hardcore way to go that likely won't work out for most of us. I know it wouldn't work out for me. Let me know in the comments if this is close to how you budget for your moto trips. And if you do things differently, let us know in the comments below. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ride safe.